Okay, so we're going to look at a couple more examples of completing the square. We're just going to get the hang of kind of the pattern of what we're doing here. First thing, I'll zoom in on this. Everything's on the same side, zero's on the other side, so we've got a good start. Now, we're going to go ahead and push that +3 off to the side and put in our two spaces. So 2y squared plus 4y space plus 3 equals 0. All right, so what I want us to notice is we got rid of that +3 because that gets in our way, so we pushed it off to the side. Here we have a 2y squared plus 4y. If there's a number in front of your y squared, it's very likely that it's a GCF for the first two terms. So let's go ahead and factor that out. 2 parentheses y squared plus 2y. And then what I'm going to do is this first space is going to stay inside the parenthesis, and it's going to look like that. So now I can just focus on this trinomial that I'm building right here. We take our b value, which is 2, divide it by 2, which is 1, and then we have to square that number, positive 1. Alright, so here it gets just so slightly tricky. I just added in a 1. You guys did too, because you wrote it down with me. Now, normally we would subtract a 1 right here, but because we have this 2 out in front of the parentheses, technically, if I were to multiply this all back out, this 2 would get multiplied with that 1. So even though I wrote down +1, I've actually added in a value of 2 times 1. So really, that is 2 times 1 is 2, and so I have to counterbalance a 2. So I'm going to subtract 2. We will hopefully have another example like that, so we can look at that again. All right, so now we have something that is factorable. That was our goal. Factors of 1 that add up to 2 are 1 and 1, so it's the same factor twice. I can just say y plus 1 squared. That 2 out front comes down, and then over on the side, -2 plus 3 is a positive 1 equals 0. So now we have an equation we can solve. If you guys notice, our original equations that have had the y squared and the y, they're not like terms, so you can't put them together. And how do you solve for this y when that y is still there? So when we complete the square, we get an equation with just one y right here, so we can solve for that. So even though I'm sure you're loving completing the square, and it seems like maybe a lot of work, it is kind of a neat way to get through solving an equation like this. So we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. We have 2y plus, let me talk about that. So whatever's being squared, we want to make sure to get that by itself. So if you have any plus or minus numbers on the outside, that's the first one to go to the other side. Now we're going to take care of that 2 out front. We're going to divide both sides by 2, leaving us with y plus 1 squared equals -1/2. And then to undo a square, we square root both sides. So y plus 1 equals plus or minus. Now the square root of a -1/2, so I'm just going to bring in I right now. So this will be I times the square root of a positive 1/2. And then we can subtract 1 from both sides. Oops. So y equals -1 plus or minus I times the square root of 1/2. All right, so anything look a little bit weird about our answer? Yeah, we don't leave square roots of fractions like this. So remember, square root of 1/2 is square root of 1 over the square root of 2, which is 1 over the square root of 2, but we can't have the square root of 2 in the denominator, so we rationalize it, leaving us with the square root of 2 over 2. So that just turned into the square root of 2 over 2. So our final answer, y equals -1 plus or minus I times this, so I'm just going to put that I in the top, I times the square root of 2 all over 2. All right, let's see if the next one is this much fun. All right, so in this example, we want everything on the same side, so I'm going to subtract 30x from both sides. So 5x squared minus 30x plus 100 equals 0. All right, we're going to get this c value out of our way, so we put in our two spaces, 5x minus 30x, space, space, plus 100 equals 0. And then we say, well, we got that number in front of the x squared, and if you notice, it is a GCF, so we're going to factor that out of the first two terms, x squared minus 6x. We're going to fill in that so we have a factorable trinomial. So, to figure out what magic number goes here, all we do is we take our b value, negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3, and we square that to get a positive 9. Now remember, I can't write a minus 9 right here because technically I am putting in a value of 45 because that 5 could get multiplied through with that 9. So I'm going to subtract 45. All right, so we've got our 5 out front. This is factorable, factors of 9 that add up to negative 6. By the way, this little negative 3 that we came up with when we did b over 2, it's always going to be that number. So that's a little shortcut if you keep that in mind. X minus 3 squared. And then negative 45 plus 100 is a positive 55 equals 0. All right, we're going to subtract 55 from both sides. So 5 times x minus, I hope I gave you guys enough room in your packets for this, equals negative 55. Then we divide by 5. So we have, where's my, I don't know where it is. Okay. That cancels. X minus 3 squared equals negative 11. Now I can square root both sides, leaving us with x minus 3 equals plus or minus, can't forget that, square root of negative 11. Let's bring in I times the square root of positive 11. And we can go ahead and finish this out by adding 3 to both sides. So x equals 3 plus or minus I times the square root of 11. The square root of 11 cannot be reduced, so we're going to call this one good.